So there's different kinds of brands. This is, you've grown up with this, so it's not going to come as a shock with you. You can have classify brands by geography. You have national brands or global brands, and then you have regional or local brands. I have here an example of a regional brand that I grew up in, I like to say a small town in Minnesota, Sunfish Lake. Sunfish Lake, Minnesota, yep. And the local brand of potato chips there was Old Dutch potato chips, and you just can't find potato chips that taste as good as Old Dutch potato chips. So every time I go home, I like load up the car with Old Dutch potato chips, but you can only get them in a certain region. That would be a regional brand. You can also look at brands from ownership perspective. A manufacturer's brand, that's what we normally think of when we think of brands, sometimes called national brand. That is where the manufacturer of the product owns the brand. Pretty much every brand that we can think of would be a national brand. For example, gosh, Starbucks. Is that a brand? Ford? The list goes on. This next category, distributor brand, middle person brand, private label brands, these are brands that are owned by somebody other than the manufacturer, typically somebody involved in distribution, either the distributor, as in, for example, Ace Hardware, or in the at the retailer with, gosh, President's Choice, or what's Safeway's private brand? Anybody shop at Safeway? What's their private brand? A Signature, that's right, Signature, because it's the best. The issue with the ownership of the brand is the entity that owns the brand owns the relationship with the customer. So you want to own the brand, if at all possible. Normally, the manufacturer has the closest association with the product, can do a better job of understanding and fulfilling customer promises or customer needs. In order for a private label brand to have meaning, the company providing the private label brand has to have some meaning to the promise. So when I go to Safeway and I buy a Safeway Signature product, I don't know that Safeway is all that good at canning beans, but I know that Safeway is a store. I trust the store. I trust the way they run their store. I trust that if I have a problem with a product, they'll take it back to me. And because they have a reputation as a store, they can extend that reputation to the brand and make meaningful promises that are important to customers. So if I was to open a convenience store and come up with my own private label brand of coffee, Bruce's Coffee, that's only available at my convenience store, and it comes in a blue can, would you prefer that or Maxwell House? If that was the only choice, I know we would all rather have a good coffee. But Bruce, I've never heard of this store before. It wouldn't work. So there needs to be, whoever's offering the brand needs to have enough of a reputation, enough of a business presence to be able to make a promise that customers would consider to be meaningful and something that they could reasonably keep. The last kind of brand is an experiment that's been tried a couple of times in my lifetime, and it has flopped both times. This is the concept of generic brands, or no brand, sometimes called white label or no brand products. And the theory behind generic brands or white label products is, we all know that the cost of marketing for consumer packaged goods is very high. And if we eliminate all of the advertising and all of the marketing costs associated with the product, we should be able to offer it at the customer at a substantial discount. And the problem is twofold. One is when you're dealing with a generic brand rather than a national brand or a distributor brand, you have the issue of economies of scale. Kellogg's making cereal makes a lot of cereal, And even though they spend a lot on marketing and a lot on advertising, the fact that they make so much cereal, their costs compared to me coming up with my own private label brand of cereal are so high that I might not be able to offer that much of a financial incentive to go with the generic brand. And the other is that, again, we're learning that brands are associated with the pleasure centers of the brain, so brands actually are part of the value of the product, which is why generic brands just generally don't make it. Where we are seeing generic brands really coming into their own is in the pharmaceutical industry. And this is I think that the popular term is generic, but I think in the trade they call it chemically identical. And the idea is that the price of a patented drug is extremely expensive when it comes off patent. Other companies can buy it and raise the price 275% and still sell it cheaper than the prescription.